1995 was supposed to be the year of one man. One man was chosen to carry the World Wrestling Federation into a new era. One man was positioned to be the next Hulk Hogan. Of course, I'm talking about Diesel, Big Daddy Cool, Kevin Nash. Whatever you want to call him, this 7-footer from Detroit was Vince McMahon's golden boy, the man who was supposed to lead the WWE out of the dark ages and into a prosperous future. But here's the thing, that future never came. At least not with Diesel holding the belt. Diesel's 358-day reign as WWF champion is one of the most controversial title runs in the history of professional wrestling. It's the longest WWF Championship reign of the entire 1990s. Think about that for a second. In a decade that featured Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock, it was Diesel who held the title longer than anyone else. And yet, his reign is often labeled as a failure. Some even call it the worst championship run in company history. So what happened? How did a man with the look, the size, and the backing of Vince McMahon himself end up presiding over one of the lowest points in WWE history? Let's break it all down. Before we talk about Diesel's reign, we need to understand what was happening in the WWE at this time, because context is everything here. The early 1990s were an absolute nightmare for Vince McMahon and his company. I'm talking about a perfect storm of scandals, departures, and financial troubles that nearly brought the WWE to its knees. First, there was the steroid scandal. In 1991, Dr. George Zahorian, a ringside physician, was convicted of illegally distributing anabolic steroids to wrestlers. His trial revealed that he had been supplying steroids to wrestlers for years, often delivering the substances directly to the company's headquarters at Titan Tower. This cast a massive shadow over the WWE and fueled public suspicion about steroid use in professional wrestling. Then came Hulk Hogan's appearances on shows like the Arsenio Hall show, where his massive physique only added fuel to the fire. The media was all over this story, and their family-friendly image was taking a beating. But the problems didn't stop there. The steroid scandal led to a mass exodus of talent. In 1992 alone, Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, the British Bulldog, Sid Justice, and basically anyone who looked like they might be on steroids all disappeared from WWE programming. The roster was decimated. Hogan, the biggest star in wrestling history, was gone. He would eventually sign with WCW. The Ultimate Warrior was gone. The WWE was left scrambling to find new stars to carry the company. This was the birth of what they called the New Generation era. Younger, smaller, more technically skilled wrestlers like Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and Ramon were pushed into the spotlight. But here's the harsh reality. The New Generation era is generally considered the company's biggest audience-alienating period by both fans and WWE themselves. Episodes of Monday Night Raw were literally being filmed in high school gyms. The undercard was filled with embarrassing gimmicks like a wrestling plumber, a wrestling garbage man, and a wrestling race car driver. The roster was so thin that Royal Rumble matches featured guys who weren't even signed to the company just to fill out the numbers. This was the WWE that Diesel inherited. A company in crisis, a depleted roster, and an audience that was slowly tuning out. The atmosphere at events during this time was noticeably different from the glory days of Hulkamania. The crowds were smaller, the energy was lower. Fans who had grown up watching larger-than-life characters like Hogan, Macho Man, and the Ultimate Warrior were now being asked to invest in plumbers and garbage men. It wasn't working. The WWE was also dealing with increased competition. WCW, backed by Ted Turner's deep pockets, was slowly building momentum. They had signed Hulk Hogan in 1994, and while they hadn't figured out how to use him properly yet, the threat was real. The Monday Night Wars hadn't officially started, but the groundwork was being laid. So keep all of this in mind as we go through his championship reign. Diesel wasn't walking into a thriving company with a hot roster and eager audiences. He was being handed the keys to a sinking ship and being told to somehow keep it afloat. Now let's talk about how Diesel got to the top in the first place. Kevin Nash had actually been in WCW before coming to the WWE, but his time there was forgettable at best. He went through a series of terrible gimmicks. First, he was Master Blaster Steel, complete with a ridiculous mohawk. Then he became Oz, and yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. He came out in green ring gear with a wizard's hat and a fake white beard. It was awful. Then he became Vinny Vegas, a wisecracking mobster character. Nothing was working. In 1993, Shawn Michaels saw Nash on TV and suggested the WWE sign him. Nash jumped at the opportunity and debuted in WWE in June 1993 as Diesel, Shawn Michaels' bodyguard. The name was suggested by Shane McMahon, playing off the fact that Nash was from Detroit, the Motor City. At first, Diesel was just there to help Michaels retain his Intercontinental Championship. He wasn't wrestling much himself, but then came the 1994 Royal Rumble, and everything changed. Diesel entered the Royal Rumble match at number 7, and he absolutely dominated. He eliminated 7 men in under 18 minutes of in-ring time. The crowd was initially booing him because he was aligned with the hated Shawn Michaels. But by the time he was eliminated, they were actually cheering for him. People could see the potential in this guy. He had the look, the size, and the athleticism that Vince McMahon loved. As 1994 progressed, Diesel's star continued to rise. He won the Intercontinental Championship from his real-life friend Razor Ramon, with Shawn Michaels' help. Then he and Michaels won the WWE Tag Team Championship from the Head Shrinkers the night before SummerSlam 1994. Diesel was on fire, but the relationship between Diesel and Michaels was starting to show cracks. At SummerSlam, Michaels accidentally superkicked Diesel while aiming for Razor Ramon, costing Diesel the Intercontinental Championship. Despite being visibly angry, Diesel let it slide and chalked it up to miscommunication. Then came Survivor Series 1994. During a tag team match, another stray Michaels superkick struck Diesel instead of Razor Ramon. This time, Diesel had had enough. He chased Michaels to the back while the fans cheered. They wanted to see Diesel finally give the arrogant Heartbreak Kid what he deserved. After the match, Michaels grabbed his bags and ran, throwing down the WWE Tag Team Championship and declaring he was done with Diesel. The tag titles were vacated, and Diesel was now on his own. But here's where things get interesting. That same night at Survivor Series 1994, Bret Hart lost the WWE Championship to Bob Backlund in controversial circumstances. Backlund, a former champion from the early 1980s, had been brought back as a crazy heel character. His title win was supposed to be a transitional reign to set up the next champion. 3 days later, on November 26, 1994, at Madison Square Garden, Bob Backlund defended the WWE Championship against the newly turned babyface Diesel. The match lasted 8 seconds. Diesel hit one jackknife powerbomb, pinned Backlund, and became the new WWE Champion. 8 seconds. That's all it took. Diesel had gone from bodyguard to world champion in less than a year and a half. And in 1994, he became the first man ever to win the WWE Triple Crown, holding the Intercontinental, Tag Team, and WWE Championship all in the same calendar year. The stage was set, Diesel was the man, and Vince McMahon had big plans for him. Diesel's first major title defense came at the Royal Rumble 1995 against Bret Hart. Now Bret was a former 2-time WWE champion and arguably the best technical wrestler in the company. This was a babyface versus babyface match, which was unusual, but both men were so popular that the fans were split. The match itself was excellent. Bret worked over Diesel's knee throughout the match, applying the figure 4 leg lock multiple times. Diesel used his size and power to fight back. At one point, Bret tied Diesel's legs to the ring post with tape and kicked him repeatedly. It was brutal, innovative stuff. This was classic Bret Hart storytelling, finding a body part and systematically destroying it. What made this match special was the contrast in styles. Bret was the technical wizard, the guy who could wrestle circles around anyone. Diesel was the power man, the guy who could end a match with one move if he could hit the jackknife powerbomb. The tension came from whether Diesel could survive long enough to land his finish or whether Bret's relentless assault on the knee would prevent it. The match went back and forth with great near falls. Diesel hit the jackknife powerbomb and seemed to have the match won. But before the referee could count the pinfall, Shawn Michaels ran to the ring and attacked Diesel. The crowd was in shock. The referee ordered the match to continue, which was unusual but kept the drama going. Then Bret locked in the sharpshooter, but Owen Hart interfered and attacked his brother. More chaos ensued. Bob Backlund even got involved, attacking Bret as revenge for losing the title. Eventually, the referee couldn't control the match, and it was declared a draw. Diesel retained the championship. Dave Meltzer gave this match 4¼ stars. It was a great way to start the title reign. Sure, the finish was screwy, but it protected both guys and set up future storylines. Meanwhile, Shawn Michaels won the Royal Rumble match after entering at number 1 and lasting the entire match. This set up a championship match between the former friends at WrestleMania 11. WrestleMania 11 took place on April 2, 1995, at the Hartford Civic Center. Now here's something that tells you a lot about where Diesel stood in the company's eyes. The WWE Championship match between Diesel and Shawn Michaels was not the main event. Instead, the main event was Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow. Yes, an NFL linebacker with no wrestling experience was main eventing WrestleMania over the WWE Championship match. That's how desperate the WWE was for mainstream attention. Think about what that says. You have your world champion, the guy who's supposed to be your franchise player, and you're telling the audience that a celebrity match is more important than his title defense. It's insulting when you really think about it. The WWE was more concerned with getting mainstream press coverage than with building up their own champion. This would become a recurring theme throughout Diesel's reign. But let's talk about the match itself. Diesel versus Shawn Michaels was actually really good. These two had incredible chemistry together, which makes sense given their real-life friendship as members of the clique. Michaels was accompanied by his new bodyguard, Psycho Sid, while Diesel came out with Pamela Anderson, who was supposed to accompany the Royal Rumble winner but chose Diesel instead. Jenny McCarthy ended up with Michaels as a replacement. It was peak mid-1950s celebrity involvement, with Jonathan Taylor Thomas from Home Improvement serving as the guest timekeeper. The match told a great story. Michaels used his speed and agility to try to outmaneuver the bigger Diesel, while Diesel used his power to dominate when he could get his hands on Shawn. There was even a controversial moment where Michaels had Diesel pinned with his feet on the ropes, but the referee caught it. In the end, Diesel hit the jackknife powerbomb and pinned Michaels clean in the middle of the ring to retain the championship. Pro Wrestling Illustrated named this their match of the year for 1995. The crowd was hot, the action was solid, and both men came out looking good. This should have been the launching pad for an incredible title reign. But then things started to go downhill. Fast. After WrestleMania, you'd think the next logical step would be to continue the Diesel versus Michaels feud, or perhaps move on to another top-tier opponent. But that's not what happened. Instead, Vince McMahon seemed obsessed with putting Diesel in big man versus big man feuds. And this is where the reign really started to suffer. First up was Psycho Sid. Now Sid had just turned on Shawn Michaels the night after WrestleMania, attacking him with multiple powerbombs. Diesel came to Michaels' rescue, and the two former enemies were now allies again, reuniting as two dudes with attitudes. Diesel faced Sid for the WWE Championship at In Your House 1 in May 1995. The match was slow and plodding. When you put two 7-footers in the ring together, you're not going to get a technical masterpiece. Diesel won by disqualification after Tatanka interfered, which meant he retained the championship, but the feud had to continue. The rematch happened at In Your House 2 in July, this time as a lumberjack match. Diesel won with a big boot to the face after about 10 minutes. The match was marginally better, but it still wasn't anything special. The feud with Sid had done nothing to elevate Diesel or draw money. And here's where things got really bad. At the 1995 King of the Ring tournament, Mabel won the whole thing by defeating Savio Vega in the final. Mabel, a perennial tag team wrestler who had never been anywhere near the main event scene. The WWE decided to push him as King Mabel and give him a WWE Championship match at SummerSlam. Now, I need to explain why this was such a disaster. Mabel was a 500-pound man with limited in-ring ability. He was slow, he was sloppy, and he had no business being in a main event match for the world title. The 1995 King of the Ring pay-per-view is often cited as one of the worst PPVs in WWE history. One reviewer gave it a rating of 1 out of 10 and called it one of the worst WWE pay-per-views ever produced. And Mabel winning the tournament was a huge part of that. The decision to push Mabel was baffling to everyone. Here was a guy who had spent his entire career in the tag team division as part of Men on a Mission. He wasn't over as a singles wrestler. He couldn't work a compelling match. His promos were forgettable. And yet, the WWE decided that this was the guy who should challenge for the world title at the second biggest show of the year. Some have speculated that Vince McMahon was obsessed with the idea of monster heels during this period. He wanted his babyface champion to slay giants, just like Hulk Hogan had done in the 1980s. The problem was that Hogan was facing off against athletic big men like Andre the Giant and King Kong Bundy, guys who could actually work. Mabel was just big. That was his entire gimmick. The build to SummerSlam was rough. During Diesel's lumberjack match with Sid at In Your House 2, King Mabel, who was one of the lumberjacks, attacked Diesel and threw him into the steel steps. The following weeks saw more attacks from Mabel. Then, in a bizarre booking decision, British Bulldog turned heel and attacked Diesel on Raw, setting up what seemed like a future feud. But then Bulldog wasn't even at SummerSlam. He just disappeared from the storyline. Instead, Lex Luger showed up in what would be his last WWE appearance to help Diesel. It made no sense. SummerSlam 1995 took place in Pittsburgh, and the main event was Diesel defending the WWE Championship against King Mabel. The match was terrible, just terrible. Diesel started with some forearms and clotheslines, but when you're working with a 500-pound opponent who can barely move, your options are limited. The match was filled with rest holds and slow-motion action. At one point, Mabel hit a sit-down splash on Diesel that legitimately injured him. Diesel has said that splash caused permanent back damage that affected him for the rest of his career. After about 9 minutes of torture, Diesel won with a clothesline off the second rope. He retained the championship, but at what cost? This match is widely considered one of the worst SummerSlam main events of all time. The storyline wasn't good, the match wasn't good, and it did nothing for either guy. It made Mabel's King of the Ring win completely pointless. And here's the kicker. The show did a 0.9 buy rate, which was down significantly from SummerSlam 1994. People were tuning out. To make matters worse, the match that followed Diesel versus Mabel on the card was Shawn Michaels versus Ramon in a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. That match was incredible, one of the best of the year, so you had this amazing ladder match completely overshadowing the WWE Championship main event. That's not a good look for your world champion. Let's take a step back and look at Diesel's title reign from a business perspective, because this is where the criticism really comes from. During 1995, the year in which Diesel held the belt for 11 months, the WWE only had 2 sellouts with an attendance above 10,000 people. Those were WrestleMania 11 and SummerSlam 1995. That's it. The house show business was tanking. When Diesel won the WWE Championship at Madison Square Garden, there were only 7,000 fans in the building. Madison Square Garden, the mecca of professional wrestling, and they couldn't even fill it. The pay-per-view numbers were equally dismal. WrestleMania 11 lost 80,000 buyers compared to the previous year. SummerSlam 1995 was down 95,000 buys from SummerSlam 1994. Survivor Series 1995 posted only 128,000 buys, down from 254,000 in 1994. That's nearly half the audience gone in 1 year. Diesel has often been labeled the lowest-drawing WWE champion in history. Now there's some debate about this. Some people argue that Shawn Michaels' subsequent reign actually drew worse. Others point out that JBL's reign in 2004 to 2005 was also terrible for business. But the fact remains that business declined significantly during Diesel's time on top. Bruce Pritchard, who was a WWE producer at the time, has talked about this. He said that when Diesel won the championship at Madison Square Garden, there were only 7,000 fans there. He pointed out that 7,000 fans in Huntsville, Alabama would be a great house, but 7,000 fans in Madison Square Garden means you probably lost money running the building. Pritchard also shared a story about confronting Diesel about the numbers. Diesel apparently said to him, "You know, I'm the lowest earning WWE champion of all time." And Pritchard responded, Well, it goes hand in hand with the lowest drawing WWE champion. They apparently had some heated words after that. But here's the thing, is it fair to blame Diesel entirely for these numbers? The entire product was struggling. The roster was thin, the gimmicks were terrible. WCW was starting to gain momentum and would launch Monday Nitro in September 1995. The whole industry was in a transitional period. There's actually an interesting statistic that goes against the narrative. Raw set an all-time record on April 24, 1995, for a Diesel versus Bam Bam Bigelow title match, doing a 3.9 rating and reaching 2.28 million homes. That was the largest audience to watch pro wrestling in the US since the Hogan versus Flair title match in August 1994. So Diesel could draw under the right circumstances. The problem was that the WWE went from 5 pay-per-views in 1994 to 10 pay-per-views in 1995. They diluted their own product. Many of those new in-your-house shows were only 2 hours long, which naturally meant lower buy rates. The comparison to 1994 isn't entirely fair. And let's not forget who Diesel was feuding with. At first, he worked with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, 2 of the best workers in the company. Those matches were good, but then he was stuck working with Sid and Mabel. Big man versus big man, matches that were slow, plodding, and boring. You can only do so much when your opponents can't work. After the Mabel disaster, Diesel's reign entered its final phase. He continued as 2 dudes with attitudes with Shawn Michaels, and the two actually had a fun run together. At In Your House 3 in September 1995, they challenged Owen Hart and Yokozuna for the WWE Tag Team Championship in a winner-take-all match where all 3 titles were on the line. Diesel's WWE Championship, Michaels' Intercontinental Championship, and the Tag Team Championship were all at stake. It was a creative idea, though they ultimately lost the match. Diesel then moved into a feud with the British Bulldog, who had aligned himself with Owen Hart and the Anvil as part of Camp Cornette. At In Your House 4, Diesel defended the championship against Bulldog with Bret Hart on commentary. Bret interfered in the match by attacking Bulldog, which caused Diesel to be disqualified. He retained the title, but he was furious about the interference. Diesel and Bret got into a brawl after the match, setting up their eventual showdown. This was actually a smart angle. It created tension between 2 top babyfaces and gave the audience something to anticipate. WWE President Gorilla Monsoon signed a WWE Championship match between Diesel and Bret Hart for Survivor Series 1995. It would be a no disqualification match, adding some extra intrigue. Diesel and Bret had faced off for the title twice before. At King of the Ring 1994, Bret defended against Diesel and won by disqualification. At Royal Rumble 1995, their match ended in a draw. So Survivor Series would be the rubber match, and this time there had to be a winner. The match at Survivor Series 1995 is genuinely one of the best matches of both men's careers. It was violent, it was dramatic, and it told an incredible story. This was Diesel's chance to prove that he could deliver on the biggest stage, and to his credit, he absolutely showed up. Right from the start, both wrestlers untied the top turnbuckle pads, exposing the steel underneath. This was a no disqualification match, so anything goes. The message was clear: these two were going to war, and someone might not walk out under their own power. Bret focused his attack on Diesel's knee, trying to take away his power base. He applied the figure 4 leg lock and worked over the leg methodically. Classic Bret Hart psychology. Every move Bret made had a purpose. He wasn't just doing moves to fill time. He was systematically destroying Diesel's leg so that the jackknife powerbomb would become impossible. Diesel, to his credit, sold the legwork beautifully. He was hobbling around the ring, wincing in pain, but still fighting back with his power moves when he could. The crowd was invested in both men. This felt like a real fight between 2 competitors who genuinely didn't like each other. The action spilled to the outside, and this is where things got wild. Diesel dominated Bret on the floor, and then, in a moment that shocked everyone watching, he threw Bret through the Spanish announce table. This was 1995. Tables weren't getting broken every week like they would be in a few years. This felt dangerous and real. Back in the ring, Diesel set up for the jackknife powerbomb. He lifted Bret up, but Bret was almost knocked out and collapsed. Diesel tried to pick him up again, but Bret had been playing possum. He hooked Diesel's leg and rolled him into a small package, getting the pin and winning his third WWE Championship. After 358 days, Diesel's reign was over, but the story wasn't done yet. An enraged Diesel attacked the new champion after the match. He hit Bret with not one, but two jackknife powerbombs, leaving the hitman laying. This was the beginning of Diesel's tweener turn. He was no longer the smiling babyface. He was a guy who didn't care what the fans thought. If they liked him, great. If they didn't, he didn't care. This version of Diesel was actually more interesting than the championship reign version. He had an edge, he had attitude, and ironically, this character would become the template for what he would do in WCW just a few months later. Following Survivor Series, Diesel remained in the title picture but was no longer champion. At In Your House 5 in December, he defeated Owen Hart, who had injured Shawn Michaels. At the Royal Rumble 1996, Diesel entered at number 22 and was the last man eliminated, getting super kicked over the top rope by the winner Shawn Michaels. After the match, Diesel teased attacking Michaels before giving him a high five instead. The crowd didn't know what to make of him. But then Diesel did something that cemented his heel turn. He interfered in the main event between The Undertaker and WWE Champion Bret Hart, costing Undertaker the match. This set up a feud between Diesel and Undertaker, with their first match taking place at In Your House 6 in February 1996. Diesel challenged Bret Hart for the WWE Championship in a steel cage match, but lost after Undertaker attacked him in retaliation. By this point, Diesel's WWE career was winding down. His contract was expiring, and WCW was offering massive guaranteed money to WWE talent. Eric Bischoff was opening up the checkbook and trying to steal away the WWE's stars. Scott Hall, Diesel's close friend and fellow Clique member, was the first to sign with WCW. When Hall told Diesel about the money being offered, it was too good to ignore. WCW was offering a 3-year guaranteed contract worth millions, with far fewer dates than the WWE schedule. Triple H later recalled that Diesel didn't initially want to leave. He said Diesel was in a place where they were offering ridiculous money, but he still didn't want to go. Then Diesel's wife essentially told him to take the money. She wasn't going to raise their kid by herself with that brutal WWE schedule anymore. Diesel gave Vince McMahon a chance to match or better the offer, but the WWE simply couldn't afford what WCW was paying. The company was losing money. They didn't have the resources to compete. Diesel's last televised WWE match was at In Your House 7, Good Friends, Better Enemies, in April 1996. He challenged Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship in what turned out to be an excellent match. Despite being on his way out, Diesel put on one of his best performances. He and Michaels tore the house down for nearly 18 minutes before Michaels won with sweet chin music. After the match came one of the most infamous moments in wrestling history: the curtain call. At a Madison Square Garden house show, Diesel and Razor Ramon were having their final matches before leaving for WCW. After the main event, all 4 members of the Clique, Diesel, Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H, embraced in the ring and celebrated together, business and to the fans. Triple H, being the only one of the 4 who wasn't a top star or leaving the company, took the punishment. His planned King of the Ring victory was given to Steve Austin instead, and the rest is history. A few weeks later, Diesel debuted in WCW as Kevin Nash, forming the Outsiders with Scott Hall. They came in as invaders, supposedly still working for the WWE, though WCW had to scale that back due to legal concerns. At Bash at the Beach 1996, they were joined by Hulk Hogan, who shocked the world by turning heel and forming the New World Order. The NWO became one of the hottest angles in wrestling history and helped WCW dominate the Monday Night Wars for the next 2 years. The contrast between Diesel's WWE run and Kevin Nash's WCW run is staggering. In the WWE, he was a struggling babyface champion who couldn't draw. In WCW, he was a cool, cocky heel who oozed charisma. The character work was completely different. Nash was allowed to be himself, to crack jokes, to be arrogant, to be real. And the audience responded. The NWO changed professional wrestling forever. It blurred the lines between reality and fiction. It made being a heel cool. It spawned countless imitators and influenced the WWE's own Attitude Era. And Kevin Nash was one of the 3 founding members. And here's the ultimate irony. Kevin Nash, the guy who couldn't draw as WWE champion, became one of the biggest stars in wrestling as part of the NWO. He went on to win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship 4 times and the WCW World Tag Team Championship 9 times. He was a main eventer for years. Nash jumping ship to WCW, along with Scott Hall, is often cited as the main reason Vince McMahon started offering guaranteed contracts to his talent. Before this, WWE wrestlers were working without the financial security that WCW was providing. McMahon realized he needed to change or risk losing everyone. The decision proved to be crucial in the long run, as it helped stabilize the roster and eventually compete with WCW. So we come back to the original question, how good was Diesel's 358-day WWE Championship reign? Well, I'll put it to you this way. Was it really a championship reign? What I mean by that is a champion is supposed to be held in the highest regard. The champion is supposed to be main eventing cards and be the centerpiece of the company. But throughout Diesel's reign, it often felt like he was an afterthought. At WrestleMania 11, the WWE Championship match was the co-main event. Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow closed the show. At SummerSlam 1995, the Diesel versus Mabel main event was completely overshadowed by the Michaels versus Ramon ladder match. The WWE was so desperate for mainstream attention that they were willing to put celebrity matches and intercontinental championship matches above their world champion. And the opponents. My God, the opponents. Diesel started his reign working with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, 2 of the best wrestlers in the world. Those matches were good to great, but then he was stuck with Sid and Mabel, 2 big men who couldn't work and had no business being in main event programs. The quality of the reign suffered because of who Diesel was put in the ring with. There's an argument to be made that Diesel was set up to fail. He inherited a company in crisis. The roster was depleted. The scandals had damaged the WWE's reputation. WCW was on the rise. The product was stale. Vince McMahon was pushing cartoonish gimmicks that fans had grown tired of. In that environment, could anyone have succeeded as champion? But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that Diesel didn't exactly light the world on fire. His character was bland. He went from being a cool, cocky heel bodyguard to a generic smiling babyface. The edge that made him interesting was gone. His entrance music sounded like the theme from Roseanne, which doesn't exactly scream main event. He was a gimmick who was only just barely starting to show personality by the end of his reign. Part of the problem was that Diesel's babyface character had no depth. He was a big guy who smiled, gave thumbs up to the fans, and hit jackknife powerbombs. That was it. There was no edge, no complexity, no reason to invest emotionally in him beyond the fact that he was big and the champion. Compare that to what worked later in the decade. Stone Cold Steve Austin was a complex anti-hero who didn't play by the rules. The Rock was an arrogant, charismatic entertainer who could make you love him or hate him. Even Bret Hart had layers, playing the noble fighting champion or the bitter anti-American heel depending on the storyline. Diesel was just there. The WWE tried to course-correct at the end of his reign by turning him tweener, but by then it was too late. The damage was done, and he was already on his way out the door. It makes you wonder what might have happened if they had let Diesel keep his edge from the beginning. What if he had never become the smiling babyface? What if he had always been the cool, don't-give-a-damn character that he became after losing the title? The business numbers don't lie. House show attendance was down. Pay-per-view buys were down. Ratings were down. The WWE was hemorrhaging money. You can debate whether it was Diesel's fault or the circumstances around him, but the fact remains that the company struggled mightily during his time on top. And yet, there were bright spots. The matches with Bret Hart, especially at Royal Rumble 1995 and Survivor Series 1995, were genuinely excellent. The match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 11 won Match of the Year. When Diesel was put in the ring with talented opponents, he could deliver. He wasn't a ring general like Bret Hart, but he could be carried to good matches by the right opponent. The post-title tweener turn was actually the most interesting part of Diesel's WWE run. Once he stopped trying to be the smiling hero and started being a guy who didn't care what anyone thought, he became compelling. That edgier character would have been much more successful as champion. Unfortunately, by the time they figured that out, he was already on his way to WCW. In the end, Diesel's 358-day reign is a cautionary tale. It shows what happens when you push the wrong guy at the wrong time with the wrong opponents. It shows that size and look aren't everything. It shows that even with the full backing of Vince McMahon, you can't manufacture a star if the circumstances aren't right. But it also shows that failure in one place doesn't mean failure everywhere. Kevin Nash went on to have an incredibly successful career in WCW. He was a founding member of one of the most influential factions in wrestling history. He headlined pay-per-views and sold out arenas. He proved that he could draw money under the right circumstances. Was Diesel's WWE Championship reign good? Honestly, no, it wasn't. The match quality was inconsistent, the storylines were often nonsensical, the business declined. By most objective measures, it was a failure. But was it all Diesel's fault? That's harder to say. He was dealt a bad hand and did his best with it. The company around him was crumbling. The opponents he was given were subpar. The creative direction was lost. In a different time, with a different roster, things might have been different. It's no wonder that Diesel left for WCW. The WWE had nothing left to offer him. He had been their champion for nearly a year, and where did it get him? Feuding with Mabel and Sid in half-empty arenas. The grass was greener in WCW, and Nash knew it. Looking back now, Diesel's reign represents a turning point in WWE history. It was the last gasp of the old guard before the Attitude Era changed everything. Within a few years, the WWE would be pushing edgier content with Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and D-Generation X. The cartoonish gimmicks would be gone. The family-friendly image would be replaced with something rawer and more real. But in 1994 and 1995, none of that had happened yet. Diesel was stuck in a company that hadn't figured out its identity, and his championship reign suffered for it. Let me know in the comments what you think about Diesel's championship reign. Was he the worst drawing champion ever, or was he just a victim of circumstance? Like and subscribe for 100 years of luck. Until next time.